Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So the following lesson is on the following types of variables, which are the predictor variables and the outcome variables. Now this is a bit what you call slightly a bit difficult to understand. It's not that difficult, but it's just slightly difficult because you need to understand a few more things in order for you to understand what these two things are. Now if you look at the following page, you will see there's a table of a summary of a variable, and it says here independent variables. The other terms is predictor variables. Dependent variables, the other terms are outcome variables. So are they the same? No, they are not the same. They serve the same purpose, almost the same purpose, but it's used in different types of research. Okay, now if you look at the predictor variables and the outcome variables, these types of variables are used in a relationship study. Whereas if you look at the independent variables and the dependent variables, okay, these two, it's used in an experimental study. Okay, so in order for you to understand these two, you need to understand or be able to differentiate between experimental study or experimental research and also, what was that again? Relation study. Now these two terms are explained in detail in chapter 9. Okay, so you can go to chapter 9, right? But I have explained it in brief. Okay, I have derived the notes, and then let's look at the simple definition of experimental and relationship research or study. Okay, here are some notes that can be found on week 9. Chapter 9. So what is an experimental study or experimental research? It is a systematic method used to observe how an independent variable affects the dependent variable. Okay, so if you remember the study, okay, it's a study that what was that again? Observe. Okay, we are observing how these shoes, the independent variables, affects the speed of running, which is the dependent variables. Okay, so that is an experimental study. Now, a relationship research study is the study about the relationship of two variables. Okay, so the two variables in a relationship study are not called independent variables and dependent variables. They are called predictor variables and outcome variables. Okay, let's look at an example. Okay, so here's an example of a research for a relationship study. The research is on the relationship between violent video games and scores in aggression questionnaire. So, how is this research conducted? Okay, so they are looking at how violent video game is related to the aggression of a person. So how do they measure an aggression of a person? They will conduct questionnaires, and based on what the person answered in the questionnaire, they can somehow measure the level of aggression based on the questionnaire. So that is what it means by scores and aggression questionnaire. So we're not looking about the effects of something towards another thing, or to be exact, we're not looking at the effects of the independent variable to the dependent variable. We're looking at the relationship between a variable to another variables. Okay, so in this type of research, or in this example, the predictor variable, which is the variable that may affect the outcome, is the violent video games. Okay, the outcome variable is the variable on which the values are being predicted in the relationship study, is the score of the person in the questionnaire. So to recap on what we've learned so far, a predictor variable refers to the variable that may affect the outcome of a relationship study, and the outcome variable is the variable on which values are being predicted in a relationship study. Okay, just a few more important notes on these two types of variable. Because it's a relationship study, okay, it is a non-experimental study. So we will look at what experimental study and non-experimental studies are in chapter 9. Right? And then lastly, okay, the term predictor and outcome is preferred or are preferred by many statisticians because they negate the idea of manipulation by the researchers. If you still remember, okay, manipulation happens in experimental research. Okay, where you have independent and dependent variable, where the independent variable is one that manipulates the result of the dependent variables. Thank you very much.